Good morning, everybody. I'm in my outdoor office this time. I haven't been in my outdoor office for these, Wednesday mornings in a while, and so I am today. Just a beautiful, beautiful spring morning with a second cup of coffee. Um, so I'm going to take a few minutes today and talk a little bit about Bible translations and where they came from and all of that sort of stuff. That can be rather confusing to a lot of folks. Bible translations can be sort of like sort of like me trying to shop for shampoo. You go down the aisle and you see a dozen different brands and 3 dozen different kinds, and I don't, I don't know what's good. Just wanted to clean my hair, um, and so Bible translations can be that way. They can be really, really confusing because there are so many of them out there, like dozens that have come on the market in the last 40 years or so. So that's what we'll do today, and then over the next several weeks after this, I'll each week I'll open the hood, if you will, on major popular translations that you can pick up online or at your favorite bookstore. And so to begin with, where do translations come from? And I've got the 5 of them here beside me, different versions. So where do these come from? And the Bibles that we have in English are all translations. And they are all translations from earlier languages. The books of the Bible were originally written in Hebrew and Greek. Um, nearly everything, not quite, but nearly everything in the Old Testament was written originally in ancient Hebrew, and the entire New Testament was written in Greek. And these are very, very different languages than English now. The languages function very differently, and they're ancient languages, meaning that if you go to Israel today, the Hebrew that is used there is different than what the Old Testament was written in. Modern Greek isn't necessarily the same as Greek as was written in the first century. Um, so we're talking about translations from ancient languages to modern languages, um, and along the way, if we're talking about ancient languages to modern languages, the manuscript evidence for for particularly in the New Testament is incredibly good. Thousands and thousands of manuscripts for various books of the New Testament that go back to within 2 or 3 centuries of when these books were originally written. Something else that needs to be pointed out is that there's no such thing as a word-for-word translation. Preacher, what's the best word-for-word translation? Well, the simple fact is there's no such thing as doing true word-for-word. Um, if you did a true word-for-word, you would end up with something that was largely unreadable in English. To give you, here's something you could do sometime. If you get hold of what's called an interlinear Bible, an interlinear Bible will have like the Greek or the Hebrew, text, and then over that will have an English translation. And if you pick up an interlinear Bible and you try to read the English wording, it is going to be gobbledygook. Um, it'll be worse than Yoda speak if you're familiar with Yoda from Star Wars, because you have so many cases where, and have cases where a word in Greek doesn't have one set equivalent in English. Um, a word in Hebrew may not have one set equivalent in English. So in Greek, you have this word pneuma. Should we translate it as breath, or as wind, or as spirit? In both cases, the languages work differently. They don't work the same way as English. They have different verb tenses, and so it really is quite impossible to do a true word for word. The best you can hope for is something that's going to be accurate, something that's going to be really accurate to what the biblical author is originally trying to write and convey. So if all of these that we're talking about are translations from ancient Greek or ancient Hebrew into modern day English, so how do you go about doing that? What's involved in that? These translations are all done by, nearly all of them are done by committees. All the major translations are done by committees of scholars, a committee of 60, 70, 80, 100 different scholars, normally cross-denominational backgrounds, and they sort of divide up the responsibility of translating from those ancient languages into readable modern-day English. So what about the King James? Why do we have to have so many different translations? The King James was good enough for my grandparents. Why do we have 24 different ones confusing us? Now, well, some of that is that the English language changes. Language changes over time, and English does too. English has changed since 1611, when the King James was first published, and actually there have been two major revisions of the King James. So if you buy a King James Bible now, you're not buying the King James of 1611, you're buying the King James of 1769, because they realized that the language was transitioning slowly. These translations are commonly done. They're always done by committees across denominational lines, and they're commonly commissioned by major publishing houses or Bible societies. A couple of major translations have been commissioned by the National Council of Churches. So those are like the parent organizations that are sponsoring the effort to actually translate the Bible into the English versions that we have here. And so what are the philosophies that go into making a translation of the Bible? What's the thought process behind it? Two different ways we can look at this. There are two different ways that we can look at this, and the first is going to be your sort of translation philosophy. Going in, are you going to try to create an English version that is going to be as literal as possible? Are you trying to create something as literal as possible? And given that there's no such thing as word for word, are you going to try to get as close to that as possible? That's one end of a spectrum. The other end would be a translation that is going to be sort of thought for thought. Here's the thought what is the main idea of a particular verse, and you convey that main idea into modern day English. It's not that one end of that is better than the other. It's just two different ways of trying to translate a good Bible into modern English. So a spectrum, like from the most literal to the freer, more loose translations. In general, the more literal translations are going to be a little more difficult to read, and the looser translations that are sort of more thought for thought are going to be far easier to read. Another way of looking at this, which I saw explained a few days ago, is this, that we can look at Bible translations sort of as having like three different goals, if you will. Easier, and they are this: is your main idea to create something as literal, as accurate as possible? You want something that is as truly accurate to the text as possible. There's one pole. Another one would be, do you want something that is elegant to read? That is beautiful, elegant English. And the other one, do you want something that's easy to read, that's very approachable? And there's no translation that is going to major in all of those. I mean, something that is going to be very easy to read, like the Common English Bible or the New Living Translation, is not going to be, by definition, it's not going to be the most literally accurate one. Something that is going to be elegant. That is elegant, beautiful English. That works really well from reading in the pulpit. May not be the one that's easiest to read. There are trade-offs in all of these. And so what I'm going to be doing over the next several weeks is sort of popping the hood on several different English translations, and I will probably hit one or two that you have at your house today. And if there is a translation that you'd like to know a translation in particular that you'd like to know something about, let me know in the comments, either here on the YouTube channel or on the Facebook feed where you watch it. Just mention that in the comments if there's one in particular you'd like for me to open the hood on. Anyway, I hope that the rest of your Wednesday is really good. I've got a good cup of coffee, and it's a beautiful day, and things are looking up here. So have a great day.